Constant innovation is the daily mantra for trailblazers like Nike, Apple, and Google. These powerhouses show us that with bold ideas come remarkable leaders. In the bustling world of small business, standing out is the name of the game. But here's the twist. There's an innovator inside everyone. So gear up, because with the right spark, anyone can launch the next big breakthrough.
Our all-star lineup has turned trial and error into triumph. They're here to share their hard-earned wisdom with you. This is your ultimate guide to the best advice from the industry's finest. Get ready for top-notch strategies, invaluable insights, and real-life stories that will elevate your entrepreneurial journey. Learn from their experience and skip the mistakes.
Is raising capital getting you down? Feel like a circus act trying to attract the right investor? We've got you covered.
How many times have you heard, "Thanks, but no thanks"? While it's pretty awful to hear the word no, it can be a powerful motivator, as long as you don't give up. We spoke to the experts.
1.
I'm very passionate about building products and bringing something useful for people, but raising funding is very difficult. It's brutal. They say investors, they're always looking for a reason to say no. And then during the fundraising process, what you do is keep addressing their concerns so they run out of reasons to say no. And sometimes they could say no because of bad timing. Then you could always go back and see if they're interested later. We did successfully raise funding both from the private investors, the traditional way, as well as from non-traditional funding source. So from the private investors, we raised a small amount of funding, and that experience is quite similar to what most entrepreneurs experience. It's like lots of no's and a few yeses, and yay, you found investors that align with your goal and believe in you.
2.
Investing is really math. I think a lot of people actually go out to raise capital, and I don't actually think they're prepared. And so I think the knack in the industry is that it can be really challenging to raise capital. The reality is, if you have the right data for the business, if you've actually truly prepared all the way, I don't think raising capital has to be that difficult. And so I think, from my own experience of raising capital, as well as then, helping a lot of clients within our portfolio raise quite a bit of capital for their growth and scale, it normally comes back to one thing. Does the data make sense? Does the IRR, internal rate of return, make sense, for the investor? If those two match up and the risk tolerance is priced appropriately, raising is easy. I think the problem as entrepreneurs is we get a little egotistical. We usually think our business is worth more than it actually is. And the math just doesn't work.
3. I've found that when entrepreneurs and founders and new startups are trying to raise capital, it can be hard to come by when you're pursuing outside resources. That's just the reality of it. It's hard to find that unless you have that next novel idea that comes along, and there just aren't that many of those that come along and are able to capture the hearts and minds of investment groups. And so what I've found over the years is that most funding for most small businesses comes through either their own capital that they've saved, friends, family, and people who believe in you as the entrepreneur, as that founder. And so most of the time, that's where I found most capital tends to come from. If you're not trying to secure a loan, well, it can be a great resource, but you have limitations based on your personal balance sheet, how much debt you may currently have, or what your current asset situation looks like. And so it's oftentimes easier to find those that are connected to you. They're investing in you because they believe in your ability less than they do the actual concept or the business model that you're looking to start. 4.
Everybody's founder story is going to be a little bit different. And so let me tell you 2 different quick stories. First of all, I had a mentor that had been a mentor of mine since 2005. So for 7 years, he had mentored me. And he finally came to me and said, "It looks like you want to start your own company." I said, "Absolutely, but I don't have any cash." And he goes, "If you can raise half the money, I will match it." And so with his backing in friends and family round, there you go, I was able to raise the entire amount, his half plus friends and family for the other half, in 48 hours. We were oversubscribed. People were like, oh, Dan, if you're going to do something, I'm in. And it was very humbling, but it was great. Raise double or more of what you think you need. And that's what he told me. And I did that, and it still was barely enough. We had at one point 13 different credit cards on a spreadsheet. And on that credit card list, there was the credit card, whether it was mine or my co-founder's credit card, the limit on that credit card, and then the day that it looped every month. So if it loops on the 18th, that means we want to max that credit card out on the 19th, which means it's due the following 18th, and then you have the grace period. You get like a month and a half of interest-free float. On these 13 cards, we had about a $350,000 line of credit, so to speak, on 13 credit cards. Terrifying. If you ever go belly up, all that is on your own personal credit. But we did it, and it worked, and now we don't have to do that anymore. But we lived that way for many, many years, and that forces you to learn to watch every dollar as it's going in and out of your company.
5. When I was raising capital for Fran shares, it was really myself and a pitch deck. And I knew I needed to raise at least $1 million in order to properly build this company. I reached out to over 400 different venture capital groups and maybe had 3 responses. And those led to very quick conversations of interesting idea very early for us. And so I had to think how else to go raise money for it. Because frankly, when you use the F word that is franchising, a lot of venture groups don't really jump for it. It's not as sexy as AI. And so I decided to go change my audience to start off. And I reached out to angel investors. Angel investors who had experience in whether it was franchising or finance or real estate. And the idea really took hold. And it was also proving the product is that these are types of people who would invest on the platform too. And so in about a month, I raised over $500,000 from different angel investors. From there, I decided to go back to the venture capital groups that had turned me down before, because knowing my audience, I know that once you've gotten buy-in from other people, they're excited to hear your story. So I reached back out to all these venture capital groups and started pitching them. And basically, it was still a lot of the same thing, but very key points. Fantastic idea. You're clearly the guy to do it with your background, but I don't know anything about franchising. And so I'd always follow with an ask, which was find me someone who does. And eventually I got introduced to Chicago Ventures, and they were coming off 8 different billion-dollar companies that year, from Cameo to Spot Hero. And so I was surprised that they were interested in us. And it turned out their founding partner was part of a group that rolled up 500 KFCs and flipped it to private equity. So I'd found my investor who understood what we were building, and then we were off to the races after that.
When it comes to sales, are you the bull or the matador? Love or hate it, sales is still the most important role in every business. But how do you sell without being annoying?
Nothing happens until a sales is made. If you want a bright business future, you get to learn to sell. We've asked the experts for the top sales tactics.
1.
Still today, I think everybody, when they hear the word sales, they call it a dirty word, right? Or they look at sales as this annoying aspect, or, the classic, used car salesman that Hollywood put in front of our eyes, for a period of time. I think at the end of the day, one of the biggest differentiators that I see in a really good salesperson versus a poor salesperson that comes off as annoying is really the person that comes in and says, I'm going to identify needs. I'm going to truly lock in on what the needs of the other person is. And by the way, I'm not going to assume I know the needs. I'm going to ask open-ended questions to capture the needs. I'm then going to dig into those needs so I isolate the root, and then I'm going to validate what those needs are. And I find a lot of people struggle to understand why you have to slow down to do that. So then you can actually match your solution, your product, your service back to those needs.
2.
Well, it's really simple to be not annoying when you're selling. It's play win-win. In other words, understand what sales is all about. It's nothing more than a conversation between one or more people, one being maybe yourself, you're selling yourself, or it's in the business context, it's usually between 2 or more people. And they're looking for something to solve. Maybe it's a problem or find an opportunity that they're looking for something. And we're looking to say, okay, does our product or service actually support that? If so, then we have a good basis for a relationship. And if we don't, we as sales people who are selling need to be the first to disengage. So we do the right thing by them and we just play by those rules. And you'll never be annoying unless you're trying to twist the arm of somebody to buy something they're not supposed to.
3.
Yeah, I think people try to go and build sales instead of build relationships. It's amazing how many connection requests I get on LinkedIn that in their request has a sales pitch. I didn't hop on LinkedIn to get a sales pitch, and I don't want one that. Fact is, you have something in common with people. And I think it's starting building that relationship first with those and then building off that. So, whether it's like, hey, maybe you're interested in investing. If you ever come across something in the franchise space that you want to bend my ear on, happy to be a resource for you. That's not a sell. That's just offering as a resource. Hey, we went to the same college in this area. Thought it'd be great to connect if you need anything in the future. Don't sell, build relationships. And then frankly, if you're delivering actual value and they're actually interested in what you do, the sale will come about. But trying to go too hard, too fast up front is how you really sour people on what it is you do.
4.
That is hard to do. I think most sales processes out there are somewhat annoying. A sales process needs to be genuine, it needs to be authentic, it needs to be needs-based, and it needs to be human-centered. It needs to be curious and not assumption. No assuming. It needs to be curious to understand who you're talking to and what their needs may be. I often say the sales process is the dating, the purchase is the marriage. If that's how they're showing up dating, God help me what the marriage would look like. So the success that I've had with sales process is not being a salesperson. It's actually being a service person. And I believe the best service people, those with the service heart, those who have empathy, those who really care and want to understand what my need is, those who you might not be the right solution, but that's the short game, not the long game. You might not be the right solution. You may choose to recommend that they go elsewhere for what they're looking for, but to keep you in mind if they ever need A, B, C, and D, because A, B, C, and D is what you actually do best. That builds relationships. It's all about relationships. We get new customers from relationships that I built 5 years ago. I mean, it really is, you need to care. You need to care. And I think people can see it a mile away. If this is a disingenuous process, if this is a product push versus a needs-based, oftentimes people are out there with one product that they need to sell, and they're going to push it and push it and push it until they find someone who's like, yes, okay, I need that product. I need that product. That's not a healthy sales process. You need to understand what the person's needs are, and then you need to adjust accordingly.
Love it or hate it, in business, it's all about sales. But what are the most underrated activities that can boost your sales game?
Let's face it, most of us are not natural-born salespeople. With sales being challenging for most people, what are the less known but effective sales activities you can start doing today? We asked the experts.
1.
I think people overthink how a sales process needs to be. Honestly, I think people really think, oh, there needs to be a sequence of emails. I'm like, really? Does there need to be? We at Ginny Meat, I've never done sales where I've spent $1 in advertising. It's all been word of mouth. That for me has been my best sales recruit, because my sales is myself and the services and the quality of services my team provides. So that requires the money I could be investing in digital dollars, which I haven't had to do yet. Maybe I will down the track. I'm not saying no to it. I'm open to all avenues of growth. However, I would put that money into developing my team, developing their customer service, how we can provide like an exceptional experience for our current clientele. Then the advertising just happens.
2.
I would say my strategy in business has been relationship first, and really that give back and that generosity of my time and whatever it is that I am doing as far as on a marketing front or branding front. And so with the podcast, it's an internationally listened to show at this point in time. I invite guests on to showcase and tell their stories. And because I've now developed that relationship first and not asking them for a single thing other than their friendship and their time, it is a very natural transition to business because people want to work with people they know, like, and trust. And I'm now, I think, likable for the most part. I think I'm trustworthy, and it's been the best thing that I've done, and I wish I would have done it sooner with other things. Yes, it is niche, and it is a little bit different than a lot of other things, but it can be applied to so many different pieces of business. Highly recommend it. It does take longer. It is a marathon approach and not a sprint approach. But if you're patient and if you stick to it, it is incredible as far as what you'll see your business grow.
3.
When it comes to sales, the most unexpected thing that I found would work is cursing. I find that everyone curses, but no one likes to do it professionally. You curse with your friends. And obviously everyone does business a little differently. And so you got to be strategic about it. But, talking with people as you're building that relationship, you might slip something in like a damn or shit. And I hope I can say this on here, but you kind of gauge the person and see if they're reacting negatively towards it or if they start cursing too, and you can kind of work it up. Because frankly, if someone is dropping F-bombs on a call with you with a smile on their face, they're a customer of yours. Maybe they're buying something now, maybe they're referring you later, but you are friends and you'll be doing something in the future. And so honestly, I thought about like how I treat people in my real world, and that's how you should treat people in your sales world too.
4.
Yeah, I would say a couple others. One would be Pinterest, because people often overlook Pinterest as a place to spend any time of, kind of effort. But it's a great place to get discovered and to generate traffic. It's really good at driving traffic to your site. It's not great at conversion, so you have to do other things to convert once they get to your site, but it is a good way to drive people to your site for a very efficient spend. And then the other one would be live streaming. There's so many interesting live streaming apps right now that you can play with, experiment with, be part of, and most of them are very, very cost efficient.
Over 2.14 billion people shopped online last year, and this trend is growing. Irrespective of what it is that you're selling, having a killer online presence is key, but so often it is executed badly.
Tech is everywhere, right? We all use it. Sure, it's simple to navigate some websites with the talented designers and copywriters making everything look sleek. But here's the reality. Whether you're a tech pro or not, your clients will always judge, trust, and buy from you based on your website. I'm Stella, and welcome to the Best of Business show.
Setting up a business is an exciting and rewarding job. You can sell anything, but while running a successful online store might seem easy, spoiler alert, it's not. In the rush to make money, mistakes are often made that can dampen even the most lit enterprise. We've asked our experts what little mistakes can have a big impact on your online sales game, and they've revealed 5 whoopsies to avoid.
1.
The most common mistake I see business owners or salespeople do is overpromising. Most people like to overpromise and underdeliver. And frankly, it's got 2 negative effects. One, when you come in overpromising, it usually smells like BS. And so, you want to be realistic with them and talk about who you are and how the process works, and then how you hope to build a plan with them, not just throw a flashy number in the air. And so I think it's a mistake when people try and say, I'm going to get you X amount of leads or make you this much money or save you all of this. It's, that's a great billboard, but you haven't really built a relationship with me to believe you at all.
2.
Proofread. Proofread. I can't tell you the number of times that I have come across a social post or an article and there is a glaring mistake. Even just in the headline, take that extra time, bring someone onto your staff or have a freelancer on call that can proofread for you. I always recommend a second set of eyes, because that right there is just a very first clue that your professionalism is maybe not where it needs to be.
3.
What I tend to see is they look for the brightest, newest, shiny object in marketing. Oh, I've heard so much about TikTok. I want to do TikTok ads. Okay, well, what do you know about TikTok? I don't know. My kids are on it all the time. Well, you sell landscaping. Do you think you'll find a lot of homeowners on there that are looking for landscaping? So people are very easily distracted by what's new and different And again, I try to make my product new and different to attract that attention. But I try to advise them by first asking, what marketing has worked before? What hasn't worked before? The thing that was working, why did you stop doing it? Did it stop working? What changed?
4.
They take the human aspect out of this. They think that they can hide behind an online medium and make complex sales. That's one of the big mistakes that people make online is they don't want to take it offline. And what they don't realize is online came from offline. Human beings haven't changed, I bet, in 1,000 years. Haven't been around that long, but I can tell you for most part through my life, people still want to know that they are valued and that they can communicate. When they have questions, they don't want to be forced to a frequently asked questions channel most of the time or some type of electronic medium that, you can't even communicate because online communication carries a tone that doesn't contain our human voice. So that's the biggest mistake I see people doing online.
5.
They don't pick up the phone fast enough. In today's day and age, everybody's hiding behind email, these annoying text messages that I get from people I have no idea who they are. I think we're all tired of that, especially in the US where they don't have as restrictive laws yet. But so I think pick up the phone, dial, get on the phone with folks. That'll move your sales process much faster. But the other one that I see actually a lot of people make a mistake of when they're selling is they don't think about selling the next step. They just keep focusing on the end product or the end solution. And what they do is they sound like they're trying to get married on a first date. And they wonder why they can't get anybody to move forward. The reality is you've got to come and meet people where they are in the sales process. You've got to understand the goal of the sales process is just to get to the next step. It's not actually to get to the end product or sale, because then you start to manipulate people, and that's where you start to rub people the wrong way, and you see that closing rate massively shrink down.
Are salespeople born or made? And what can you do to move from sales zero to sales hero?
Yes, it's all about sales. But for many, selling doesn't come naturally. It requires practice. But how do you build a successful sales mindset? We asked the experts.
1.
I know it's not easy to develop a sales mindset. Not everyone is just naturally a salesperson, and that's totally okay. It doesn't mean that you can't sell. My parents own a small business, and so I was raised always to sell. So thankfully that's been a part of my background, because what we found works is going out there and just creating real connections, finding that point of interest that you share in common. And then people want to buy from you. They want to be a part of your brand and of your community and just stay, in your ecosystem. It's like you're making friends and then they want to sell from you. And then the other side of that is maybe tricking yourself a little bit or finding a little bit of a mind hack where believe in the product that you're selling, that what you're providing is actually a service to somebody and something that somebody wants. So less of, okay, I have to get this in front of people and I have to convince them to buy it, and more of somebody's looking for this, somebody needs this and wants this thing. So I'm just going to go out there and tell them about it.
2.
I think there are some that are born, the little joke of, hey, my son or daughter was, selling baby rattles to the other babies in the nursery, when they were born. I do believe that there are natural talents that come out, but I would say top percent, 1% earners, people that I train or train to be that. If they're not, they're made, because it's one of those things that it's skill set and ability, but it's also mostly skill set and mindset that come along with creating leverage. And that's a learned skill. So too many people think, oh, this person's chatty or, lovable or whatever, they'd be great in sales. And that's not really the case. Sometimes it is, but for the most part, there's still training.
3.
To build a sales mindset, it's to build off who you actually are. And me, I'm a people person and I've developed relationships. And so, that doesn't mean always that you're a great salesperson, but it means that you can focus on what you're great at. And so for me, it's understanding where people are coming from and really trying to understand who they are and ask great questions. And that turned me into a good salesperson. And that made me find success. And so really finding out what you're good at instead of trying to change yourself is how you're going to put yourself into a good sales skill set. So maybe you're very technical. Focus on that technical part of selling. Focus on explaining the technical aspects of it. Focus on how you make them understand the technical side, because that's what you're great at. And so really focusing on what you know and expanding on it is how you're going to build a great sales mindset.
4.
You got to see it as a service. And the only way that you see sales as a service is if you actually believe in your product. That actually means you have to kind of know a little bit about your product. You have to know a little bit about who you're selling to and understand why it's valuable for them. But once you have that down, that I think is the kernel. That's like the core seed of any success in sales, in my opinion. I mean, I do think that there's people out there that are AAA personalities and can sell refrigerators to Eskimos and stuff like that. But I think good deals are done through relationship, is built through trust, and that happens through an attitude of service.
Having the best product is not enough if you don't have the right price. But how do you price your product for success?
Pricing is a balancing act. Too high and you risk no business. Too low and you undervalue your work and make no money. So where's the sweet spot? We ask the experts.
1.
My biggest piece of advice is just thinking about what do you need to survive as a business and to thrive and grow. And if it's not necessarily making a few bucks today, but really making more dollars over time, think about that lifetime value. Think about how it's going to impact over time. And don't be so short-sighted with the price. So stay competitive, stay in a realm that's comfortable for you so you're not, going bankrupt, but think about it long-term and how it can impact your business.
2.
The challenge people have setting their price is they really don't know their true value. So once they understand what their true value is, then they can set pricing, right? So people buy on perception of value. And so, if you think about whoever owns a Tesla, that's great. I like Teslas too, but are they really worth a couple $100,000? I don't know, But a lot of people think it is. So to me, the value perception is not there to spend that kind of money on that particular car. So on other people, obviously it is because they're buying. So it goes back to what is the value that we are conveying that they are seeking. To value perceptions match up and give that business return on investment and the personal return on investment that the people are looking for. And that's where you set your pricing. And pricing is one of those things that we're always testing. So a lot of times people won't test the price. Most of the time people can sell for more if their value perception is higher in the perceived buyer's mind, but they never test it. But that's how we go about it. Of course, there's other ways of doing it, but that's the primary way.
3.
Price is one of those things that I've always said you can die by price and you can sell by price, but it's never going to be probably the right client at the end of the day. But when you're setting prices, you also have to take into account your time and the quality that you're giving them. So you can underprice yourself in the market really easy and be the cheapest guy on the block. But a lot of people are looking for quality anymore and not just the cheapy get what you get, because there isn't always a lot of professionalism and a lot of thought behind it. So I would say know your audience. There's a big difference of selling someone in New York City versus selling somebody in McMinnville, Oregon, and what those prices are going to look like, whether you're, a branding agency or, you're selling widgets, whatever the case is. And so knowing who your target is, but also taking in the fact that, your experience and yourself and what you put into it with your clients is also going to help drive your price. Don't be afraid to be the cheapest. Don't be afraid to be the most expensive.
4.
So think about your offer and then think about what your customers will do without you. Like, what are their alternatives? What are their substitutes? And that may be something that exactly correlates with your offer. Like if I were next door to another jewelry store, obviously that's a direct competition to me, offering a very, very similar thing. You have to kind of also think about outside of that box. If there weren't a jewelry store in their town or their area, they could order something online. They could look at antique shops. They could do any number of things, right? I would say whatever your business is, look at what your customers' options are, and then look at the way that you differentiate yourself and the value that you're creating. And then try to understand, this usually happens through trial and error, but try to understand what your real value is to the customer. And the closer you can come to understanding the true value to the customer, the more aligned your pricing can be. So we talked a lot at Babson about value creation and value capture. The first priority is to create something really valuable. So you're really truly serving people and not just trying to sell, trying to make money. But then once you're truly creating something of value, you have to figure out how to capture that value to make it a sustainable business.
The Best of Business Show is brought to you by the BASA Awards. The BASA Awards exist to recognize, reward, and promote exceptional small businesses. We run 4 award programs: Best of America, Best of Australia, Best of Canada, Best of UK. Remember, it's strictly for small businesses only. Nominate your business today.